Clint Cosgrove, national recruiting analyst with Rivals.com, here with Illinois legend and guru of all things Illinois high school football and recruiting, Edgy Tim. Edgy, thanks for coming on. Excited to talk about the state of Illinois high school recruiting in the 2022 class.
Yeah, it's been interesting, and it certainly hasn't been dull for sure. It's been one of the weirdest, probably one of the more disappointing years, I think, statewide here. And I'm sure obviously we'll get into the reasons for some of that, but it's been different, Clint. There's no doubt about it. It's been different.
Yeah, no, we've, the last two classes have really been impacted. Yep. And, I know from our conversations in the past, we thought originally last year would be the class to take the biggest hit, but it seems like this class has taken just as big of a hit, if not a bigger one, with the transfer portal and the extra year of eligibility. So,
yeah, I think that it's going to continue for another year or two, from what I can tell, until we finally get past everyone up, using those extra COVID years. And, again, with the portal, and again, this is preaching obviously to the choir about it, but it has certainly not helped recruiting on the high school level whatsoever. And it's a big concern. It's a big concern for high school coaches and parents and recruits. And it's had a big impact. And unfortunately, it impacted 2021 and certainly has impacted 22 here as well.
No question. So with all of that being said, we've been discussing this with each other for probably the past 8 years, but you've been covering this for way longer. How do you feel this class, from top to bottom, from the very top player to the last player that signs, what is the overall strength of this class compared to past classes? And what are your overall thoughts on it?
I think what's really strange about this class in Illinois in 2022 is, first of all, you have some really incredible top level talent at the very top. Something from a skill position standpoint, Clint, I don't know if we've really ever seen, to be honest with you. And the position of strength for me has been wide receiver. Oh, yeah. I mean, you go up and down, it's just kind of ridiculous, the amount of kids. I mean, you start with Luther Burden, Caleb Brown and Tyler Morris. And Tyler Morris didn't even play a senior year, so it would have been interesting to see if he was able to get on the field. Reggie Florima, and I still haven't broken out of the top 10 yet. So, again, just a really deep class of receivers, which, again, was a blast. I mean, we generally don't get those huge group of skill kids like that, but we did, and there was no doubt that was a strength of the class. And again, I mentioned real high level, high ranked kids. I mean, you got a 5-star in there, and Luther Burden, who I think deserves every star, went out and proved it week in and week out, and Caleb Brown and Tyler Morris. And again, you're just not used to seeing that high priced talent coming out of the state of Illinois in the skill positions. You're used to seeing Florida and Tennessee and Texas and the rest of them in Ohio. But so that was great to see. But unfortunately, Clint, I think when you get about 20, 25 deep, there's a huge drop off in overall talent. And I can tell you, I've been tracking this for a long time. I won't tell you how long, but you know how long. And this is going to wind up being the smallest amount of FBS signings we've ever had. Wow. As long as I've been covering this in the state of Illinois. Yeah, I've got them on track from anywhere to 52 to 55 signings for FBS. And that is by far, I mean, that doesn't even come close. It's probably 10 less than one of the lower classes we've had. So that is kind of just shocking to begin with. And, it impacts all the way through. It goes down to FCS and works their way down. And so, again, it's a combination of just less offers available out there. And the talent was just okay in some spots and some positions. I think what was really strange was the last 3 or 4 years leading up to this year, defensive line's been a pretty good position here. It just kind of fell off a cliff this year. It really did. It was really strange. It was like, okay, where all the D linemen go, and and O linemen's been kind of up and down the last few years too, and really more from. I mean, we're always going to have, the Valen Ericksons of the world, and you're going to have your handful of standouts, but I kind of look more from an overall depth of the class standpoint. And Clint, it just wasn't there in 22.
No, I agree. It's very top heavy. And you mentioned the skill talent. When I first started doing this in Illinois about 8-9 years ago, is always top heavy, with the big men or linebackers.
Yep.
What do you think the reason is for that transition from more of linemen and that sort of player to more of the talented player, skill position like a Luther Burden? I mean, what causes that?
Well, Luther Burden's a freak of nature. Yeah, let's just be honest. I mean,
Yep.
he's just incredible, and just Luther being Luther. That's exactly what it is. But yeah, I think there's a couple of things involved. I think number one, certainly from a state of Illinois standpoint, we have less people here every year, and I think it's starting to really reflect in a lot of different areas. You just see the overall consensus numbers, and you continue to see the enrollments drop. You see the numbers drop. I think that that's had an impact. And again, it's not like everyone's dying here. They're all leaving. They're all picking up and moving out of state. And it's been a huge issue here for at least a decade plus now. So that doesn't help. Our overall participation numbers are down, and you look at what COVID did. And Clint, I mean, I went to schools this year that traditionally all they'd had to do was sew the doors open and they'd have a full program. That's not happening here anymore. You have programs. I was shocked at the amount of games I went to in the fall that did not have a sophomore level for football, or they had combined freshman, sophomore. You're seeing less numbers, and I don't know where those kids are going to if they're here. I don't know if they're playing a different sport. I certainly haven't seen them if they are, and they certainly haven't been coming out for football. So I just think a combination of, again, people leaving the state, lower participation numbers across the board over the last 3-4 years in particular, and COVID. I think COVID has everyone freaked out. There's a shock. There's a glorified quote for you, but I think it has a lot of parents freaked out. I really do. Yeah. There have been parents that I've talked to that said flat out that they weren't comfortable with their kid playing here and comfortable during this era of being involved. And Clint, I'm hoping once we get past this nonsense, we can kind of get back to some sort of normalcy. And I'm hoping some of those numbers will bounce back. But it's been kind of a whirlwind of just major issues coming in, and I think really impacting overall numbers and depth. For sure.
And hopefully when this is all over and people feel comfortable again, those numbers go back up, and I have faith that it will. The NCAA might have to make some changes as far as the way they're handling the transfer portal. The NIL has played into a lot of this, and so it'll be interesting to see how it works going forward. The other thing that I really want to talk about is Illinois is typically a state that is up for grabs. I always tell that to coaches that I've worked with in the past. The one thing that coming into Chicago or the state as a whole is you've got as good a shot as anybody as pulling a kid out of here. It's not like there's a wall built around the state.
No, you're right.
But this year, there are a couple teams that did stand out, I feel like. Different than normal. Recently you've seen Iowa do a lot. That's one team that has stuck out. Michigan State has done a lot over the years within the state. And then, you had Illinois for a couple of years that wasn't really doing anything in state. So one of the teams that really impresses me, maybe not from landing the elite talent, but from a sheer numbers standpoint and really making a comeback and gaining the respect of the players and coaches in the state is University of Illinois. Their efforts and the amount of kids that they signed, it shows you the direction that the program's going and that they're going to make Illinois an emphasis. What are your thoughts on how they did in the state this year?
No, you kind of stole all the thunder. There's no doubt. It was, again, I don't think this is going to be the class that puts them over the top, but I think this is the class that is going to allow the Illini to start building that base of solid players. And that's what I see from this in-state signing class. It is a group of really solid players. I think a lot of these kids will have a chance to be contributors on the roster, contributors in the starting lineup eventually. And you're right. I just like the class. You don't have the high flying talent. You don't have the top 10. I think that's next for Illinois. I think you have to kind of establish yourself, and they've done a great job of that, Clint. They've been everywhere. They talked the talk the moment Brett Bielema came in and said, "Hey, we're gonna own this state. We're gonna do everything we can." And I don't know if you'll ever actually own this state for the reasons you mentioned. What people seem to forget is if you're an assistant coach, you can fly into O'Hare and probably be anywhere from 3 to 3.5 hours from almost every Big Ten school, minus Penn State and Rutgers. And it's very hard to lock down a metropolitan area when you're that accessible. So that's always going to be a struggle. But I've said for years, if Illinois can land maybe 2 to 3 out of the top 10 every year, I think they would be doing a really good job. And I think that's going to be the next step for them. As you mentioned, they've done a great job of establishing the recruiting ties, and they've been in the schools. They've talked to the coaches. They've really built things up well, and they've done a nice job at it. That needs to continue. And again, it's one of those interesting signs where, okay, well, you said you're going to recruit in-state talent for the high school. Well, what kind of an impact is the portal going to have? What kind of an impact is, obviously the extra COVID year and what have you? So I think people are looking at them closely, but so far, hey, you got to give them passing grades on everything. And I agree. I think they were one of the better schools here that did a good job. And then you have schools that seem to have ties. It's interesting you mentioned Iowa and Michigan State. I thought kind of ironically, Michigan State didn't do much here this year, and that was a little bit of a surprise to me. I thought even Iowa, to a certain extent, didn't do a ton here. But, I get it. Usually they're back here, and I'm sure they'll be back here for this class and getting after it. But it seemed like it was one of those years where some schools, and I don't know, maybe I'm just picking on those two, but kind of looked at it. And maybe we didn't have the depth of what they were looking for and just said, nah, we're going to take a pass this year. So I thought that was interesting to watch. I think a school like Michigan has built up some nice momentum here in Illinois, and they continue to maintain that. I mean, they land a couple of top ranked kids. Jimmy Rolder was an incredible story coming out of Marist. You go in there and you land him right away, and again, I'll point to the J.J. McCarthy era, where that he was such a personality kid, high level personality and character, and kids loved him and they root for him here. And I think that definitely helps when you go to recruit schools and kids remember him and they see him playing on TV. So I thought Michigan does a good job. They're always here. I thought Mizzou continues to come up here outside of, obviously you've got the connection with East St. Louis and the whole Illinois side of the Missouri, and they continue to try to build that up and lock that in. And they've done a great job with that. And Clint, it. We both talked to Miles McVay on Monday, and Mizzou's one of the first schools that they always seem very comfortable with, and I think that goes a long way. Now, God knows where Miles is going to wind up. He's going to have his choice of schools, but I think there's that built-in connection with those East St. Louis kids in Mizzou. So I think that's something that's important for them too. And I thought Mizzou continues to do a pretty nice job of being at least pretty consistent up here. And then you go get a St. Rita kid in Valen Erickson, and that just helps your recruiting for the following year. So I think they've done a pretty decent job here as well. Yeah, for sure. I agree on all of that. The Iowa and Michigan State being kind of an anomaly because they've done a fantastic job here in the past. Yep. And I think, that's probably a combination of their numbers of, players that they could take is down. And with Michigan State being a new staff and the way they flipped that program around, they went heavy to the transfer portal because they needed to get players to win right away. Yep. But you look at the players they're winning with, quarterback from Illinois, receiver from Illinois. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see them back in Illinois in the future when things get a little bit back to normal, especially since they've established that program now. Missouri, like you said, taking a kid like Luther Burden, that's going to pay dividend from years. He is a game changer. And Erickson, I mean, he might not be a highly ranked kid, but I think he's a kid with a lot of upside. And he is a kid who can have some success there. Michigan, taking two elite kids, like you said, Rolder and Morris. So I was really impressed with all of those. One school from a lower level that has done a really good job is also Northern Illinois. Yeah, we're going to talk about them a little bit because, he had one down year when Thomas Hammock took the program over, and I think it was a case of he just kind of wanted to get more of his kind of guys in there, and I think he did that. And you saw how young they were this year, and they were able to win. And I don't know, man. I don't know what the magic formula is for rankings in the MAC, but all I know is that NIU continues to be a consistent winner year in and year out. And I don't know. Someone's missing something because they keep winning games with the talent they have.
For sure. And you look at what they did this year. I mean,
Right.
A lot of those guys were walk-on players as well. Players that didn't have offers.
Right.
I know.
Rudolph. Spectacular in high school and didn't really have a whole lot going on. He goes as a walk-on at NIU, and he ends up a full scholarship player, starter, and I think one of the keys for them. And yeah, it's, again, it's the hard way. It's blue collar U, and that's NIU. And Thomas Hammock is a prime example of a guy that lives it, breathes it, and he goes. And another thing I like too, Clint, he goes after his guys. I mean, there are higher ranked guys and higher profile guys at certain positions, and he doesn't really care. I mean, he'll go after those guys, but in more cases than not, he's going to go after a kid that he feels personality wise fits that program and gets after it. So yeah, you're right. You've got to give some credit to NIU from what they've been able to do, because Thomas Hammock's done a nice job there for sure.
Yeah, and you look at some of the kids that they brought in, especially the receivers, the young receivers that they have coming in. I thought those were guys, guys like Malik Armstrong and Eli Reed. I mean, those are guys who have Power 5 upside. So they've done a great job, I think, between the walk-on program led by Coach Sorrentino and recruiting coordinator Coach Geely. But impressed with them. Now that brings me to sleepers.
Right on.
Let's go. Yeah, Northern Illinois has like we said, done a good job of identifying some sleepers that have paid off for them. Who do you think in this class? Who are your top sleepers? Who are guys that might be flying a little under the radar right now, or even if they're ranked a decent amount of stars or rivals ranking? Who are the guys that you see as having next level potential that might not be seen as that right now?
All right, my friend, I got 3 for you because I came ready. I did my homework and everything.
Love it.
So I got a Big Ten kid I think a lot of people need to look out for that I think kind of got a decent ranking, but I think his story could be really intriguing. I've got a MAC kid that I think got a little bit under recruited by some schools that I think will wind up having a really big career. And then I've got an FCS commit who I think if things go well, he can end up doing some good things. So you want me to go first or do you want to go?
Yeah, no, go to town.
All right. I've known this young man since he was in 8th grade. Incredible athlete, unbelievable speed. Basically played out of position his entire high school career. Played as a quarterback, put up incredible numbers, both passing and rushing. Ended up signing his letter of intent to Rutgers. I'm telling you, Rashad Rochelle has played very little wide receiver, so there's going to be a transition period there. But Clint, from an athletic standpoint, a speed standpoint, and Rashad's another kid that they call him the train, because when he gets going, he's something else, and his work ethic is unquestioned. I love the kid, obviously. And I think he's one of those that if things go his way and he's able to make that transition from playing quarterback to wide receiver in the Big Ten, he could be a really, really dangerous player for Rutgers. So I loved his game, and I love the fact that he's going to go in a little bit under the radar, and a lot has to do with the fact that he just hadn't played receiver. He's going to be a pretty good player.
No, I agree. We always knew he was a heck of an athlete. We also knew that he wanted to play quarterback. I remember him coming to your showcases and always playing quarterback.
But I give him credit, though. I give him credit because, and again, I give his dad, who was very involved with his recruiting as well, I give him credit. I mean, I think he still probably wants to play quarterback, but I think early on he realized that, hey, you know what? People like me as a receiver, and he just wants to play college ball. So again, in this era, it's not always the case, but I think that his family and they were smart enough to realize that, hey, I think my future is more on the receiver side, and he embraced it and has been working on the side at receiver. And again, I just think they were smart enough to realize where things were going and heading. And so we hopped on board. Yeah.
Well, Rutgers fans have to be excited about that one. That's a great evaluation from them. I don't know the connection there, but for them to come into Illinois and find a sleeper pick like that, that's impressive, and that's one that their fans should be excited about. I'll go with we'll alternate here. I'm going to go with Jared Beatty. Who's committed to Illinois. I don't think he's there yet from a football perspective, but when you look at him from an upside perspective, frame, length, athleticism, ability to play multiple places in defense, he's a kid that I thought originally might, if everything panned out, blow up to be one of those big time 4-star national type recruits. And, once it clicks for him, I think he is a kid that can do big things at the next level. So I'm looking, I don't know if he'll play right away. He's got some physical developing to do, but he's got all of the tools in the frame to be a star for Illinois. And he's one that I'm really, really looking forward to.
I in my final 50, I had him ranked number 8. So, love him. I mean, physically, it's all there. He's got the frame. He's going to continue to get bigger. And people need to understand a kid like Jared Beatty, it's like a 3-sport athlete. I mean, he hasn't locked in really to a weight room yet. He hasn't really devoted his time 12 months a year to football and training for football. Clint, this is going to be a kid when he comes back in here, you're not even going to recognize him because he's going to be so filled out and cut and stronger. And I agree. I think he's going to wind up. And I think what's going to be interesting too is how is his physical development could end up changing an eventual position for him. I mean, early on when I saw him, I thought rush end. Mm-hmm. This is a kid that, he's got some length to him. He's got room to grow and fill out. Yet he's still a really good athlete that can run. So yeah, I'm real interested to see where he goes. But that's a good one for sure, no doubt.
All right, let's hear your next one, Edgy.
All right, so my Mac guy, and again, I just thought, really good athlete. He had a great high school career. Does a little bit of everything. Played receiver, played defensive back, returned kicks, punts. Just kind of an electric game breaker type that I think for, size-wise, he doesn't have ideal size, maybe a little bit undersized, which dropped him overall for rankings. Jay-Sean Johnson, who played at Hoffman Estates, committed to Western Michigan. Western Michigan does pretty well here as well when it comes to recruiting. They have a really good eye and a good pulse, and they should because half that staff has Chicagoland connections, including Timmy Lester. So, but Jay-Sean, again, is just a twitchy, quick, can kind of do it all. He can play either side of the ball, and I just think he can wind up being a really, really productive player. I'll guess receiver at Western Michigan, but I just love him as an athlete. I think he's going to have a good career.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. He is a kid before I came to Rivals when I was scouting that a lot of, high Power 5 teams were inquiring about. So he does have that type of upside and that type of talent. And I think you're right. The size might've played into going to the MAC level. Not that that's bad by any means. No. But that's a huge pickup for Western Michigan. I agree. And I'm going to go with another Western Michigan player then, Savion Brown.
Yeah.
Savion is a kid that has Power 5 size, Power 5 speed, Power 5 tools. And it's just another one of those. He's going to need to develop more as a football player. Yep. But when you look at him, I mean, he looks like a Power 5 safety right now. And then when you look at the times he runs, he's a 4.5 40 kid. And once it clicks for him and, he gets into that college program, gets that college coaching and food and weight program, I think he is a kid that will have, and you hate to put the pressure and say it this early, but, I think he has next level upside if he pans out. And, I think that's a great pull for Western Michigan as well.
I think that's Western Michigan on the phone trying to get a hold of it.
Yeah, they want us to talk about the rest of the class as well.
I have one person that calls my home phone. It's my mother-in-law. I don't even have to look. I guarantee it's my mother-in-law's phone number right now. It's the only reason I still have a home phone. So
you're the last one I know with a home phone.
Yeah, well, blame the wife on that one. All right. So my last guy, and again, this is a name that early on caught a lot of recruiting attention. A lot of people looked at him. They saw the raw physical tools and the ability and got excited. And again, things just didn't kind of work out for him. But this young man is just committed recently to an FCS school. And I think if this school is patient with him and they give him some time to develop, he can end up being a really interesting player. I'm talking about Maine East offensive tackle Yasser Al-Awadi, who recently committed to Western Illinois. Clint, you know him, I know him. What a great story. I mean, this is a kid that really didn't start playing football till his sophomore year of high school. He's 6'8", 290, probably 290, 300 by now. Moves really well for that size. He's just very new and very raw. And, you know, he tried like heck to close that gap, to really shorten it up. I know he worked with EFT quite a bit, did everything in his power to get there. And he didn't quite get there his senior year. But again, so he'll go to Western Illinois. I know he considered going maybe the JUCO route or what have you, but you know, academically he's a qualifier, and you know, you just look at his family story. He talked about it. I had a story the other day on his commitment, and talked about, you know, his dad went with him on the official visit and just said he couldn't believe how happy his dad was, because first of all, his dad had never seen a college campus before. You know, came over as a refugee here, settled in Chicago. Ended up starting, you know, a family-run store, and you know, so it's truly the American dream, where his son is now going to play in college football and have his education paid for, and you never get tired of hearing stories like that. But again, it makes you realize, you know, how impactful recruiting can be, and giving a kid like this an opportunity. And again, Yasser should sell cars or something when he grows up, because he has incredible personality. He's just a really warm, terrific young man off the field. And if he can figure things out with his game and get that size and everything working for him, and I know he continues to put the work in, Clint, he's one of those names when you look at NFL draft someday and go, man, why didn't more people recruit this 6'8", 290-pound guy? Well, I just told you why. So, but yeah, Yasser's a kid that I'm definitely going to keep an eye out for sure.
Yeah, and you can't find a better kid. You know, I'm very happy for him that he found a home, and you're right. You don't find guys with his size and his athletic ability.
Right.
You know, he's relatively new to football, so he's just scratching the surface of what he can be. And talk about a big steal for Western Illinois. He is a guy who definitely, you know, a few years from now, even if his career, if he hasn't become dominant, no matter what, he is a guy that the NFL scouts will be in to see, just because of his physical tools and his upside. So that's a great one.
Room, high character kid. I mean, yeah, a lot to like about him for sure.
For sure. You know, there's a bunch of kids that I could have gone with for this last one, you know, from Maurice Edwards going to Vanderbilt, you know, Dontrell Jackson, Coastal Carolina. But a kid that I really think flew under the radar, and it's another Illinois kid, so it kind of shows you the presence that Illinois is making within the state, is Malachi Hood.
Yeah.
He is a big kid, and he, to me, fits that kind of new hybrid role that you're seeing in college football. He is
100%.
Almost, you know, the size of a linebacker already. He runs well. He can cover like a safety, arguably can cover like a corner. The kid comes downhill and will hit you. He is a kid that I would not be surprised at all if you see him on the field early for Illinois, if nothing else on special teams, because he is physically ready and he is an athlete to boot. And I think that is a big pickup for Illinois, and they did a great job with that evaluation.
Yeah, and he likes to hit. That's a really good character to have in a safety outside linebacker. He really does. Likes to play physical, had a really nice career at Joliet Catholic, and I agree. That is gonna be an interesting kid to see develop at Illinois. I think he'll end up doing well.
Awesome. Well, hey, Edgy, it is always a pleasure. I am happy that I was able to have you on instead of you having to have me on, like we've always done in the past. Cool. But always love talking Illinois football with you. Like I said, This is the guru, edgytim.com, part of the Rivals Network. Does a great job, anything Illinois high school football and Illinois high school recruiting wise. Thanks for coming on, Edgy. Always a pleasure.
Anytime you need me, pal, you just ring. Glad to do it, and glad to be a part of it.